What is going on, YouTube? So coming back today with a video I've wanted to do for a little while now. So after the NFL draft concluded, I did a way too early 2017 NFL mock draft. So I was big with NBA mock drafts this year. I never did that right after the NBA draft ended. It's about a month after it ended. So for me, it's time to do my way too early 2017 NBA mock draft. So just keep in mind, this is obviously a rough sketch. I mean, we're still, what, 4 months out of the 2016-17 college basketball season. So, you know, like I said, just keep that in mind. Yeah, so let's go ahead and start with the first overall pick. Now, again, draft order is kind of hard to figure out, so I used Bleacher Report's way too early NBA mock draft order. I will also put the link in the description below for the two, in my opinion, the two best early mock drafts right now, which is NBADraft.net. As you guys know, or if you guys watched my mock drafts before, I use that site a lot. And then also I'll put the Bleacher Report way too early one in there. Anyway, let's go ahead and get at it. So, start with the number 1 overall pick, and I had the Philadelphia 76ers selecting the power forward out of Duke, Harry Giles. So, it's close at number 1 between Harry Giles and Josh Jackson to me. Here's how I think about it, and I think this is how a lot of people think about it too. Josh Jackson is the more reliable number 1 overall pick right now, but I think Harry Giles is the more talented and better number 1 overall pick. Not by much, but by a little bit. You know, it's just those injury problems that he's had up to this point. If he's able to stay healthy and able to show that he can still be an explosive athlete without having health problems this year, then I think he's the number 1 overall pick. So the only thing to really consider is they just picked Ben Simmons, who was a power forward, and I think Harry Giles can play at the 3 if he has to. Again, not 100% sure. We'll see what happens in when he's in college. So my number 2 overall pick, I have the Boston Celtics selecting the small forward out of Kansas, Josh Jackson. So he can play at the 2 or the 3. Very explosive athlete off the wing. In my mind, has the ability to be a star in the NBA off the wing in the future. And regardless if he's picked a number 1 or number 2, I don't think there's a possibility that Josh Jackson really makes it out of the top 3. Maybe not even the top 2. Anyway, at number 3, I got the Sacramento Kings selecting the small forward out of Duke, Jayson Tatum. So again, just a superstar recruit, 5-star recruit recruited with Harry Giles to go to Duke this year. And again, I expect big things out of both them this year. The combination of both them kind of makes Duke, I believe Duke is the title favorite right now. I'd have to go back and check the odds though. Anyway, at number 4, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the point guard out of Washington, Markelle Fultz. I really like what Fultz brings to the table for Washington. You know, this will mark the second consecutive year that Washington will have an elite point guard. You know, DeJounte Murray last year, different players. But, you know, the Nuggets, I don't know if Moody is going to work out long term. You know, even if he does, we'll see. Seems like he will. You know, it's not like the investment's going to be over. But you know what? If he has a bad year and they decide they finally want to move on, then that's a good guy to do it with. So at number 5, I got the Phoenix Suns selecting the point guard out of Kentucky, De'Aaron Fox. Again, one of the most talented point guards in a very point guard heavy draft class. At number 6, I got the Philadelphia 76ers selecting the point guard out of UCLA, Lonzo Ball. So people got high hopes for Lonzo Ball this year, hoping that UCLA can finally get a run back into the tournament and, you know, take a good run at it there. You know, the Sixers, they need help at the point guard spot if they're going to finally make a run at it. You know, seeing this way too early NBA mock draft, I've talked about this year, whether I think the Sixers will actually compete or not this year. And, you know, I'm probably going to do an entirely separate video on that. But anyway, you know, it's hard to think that with the possibility of them having the 1st and 6th overall picks that, you know, they wouldn't tank for another year and finally, like, kind of round out a good team. But anyway, at number 7, I got the Orlando Magic selecting the center out of Indiana, Thomas Bryant. So coming back for his sophomore year, I really like Thomas Bryant just as a player. You know, he brings a big-time presence in the paint. Great finisher around the rim. I think he's going to have good defensive upside in the NBA. And while the Magic are kind of stacked at the in the front court spots right now, I think they could use a little bit of fresh blood at center. I don't know how long they're going to keep Vucevic around for. I'm assuming long term, but you know, most of their depth right now is at the power forward spot. But they did add Bismack Biyombo, just a name to keep in mind. Anyway, at number 8, I got the Charlotte Hornets selecting the center out of Duke, Marques Bolden. I really like this pick because I think that the Hornets are going to need to get a guy to replace Big Al long term. You know, Roy Hibbert's probably not the guy. It worked well when they had Big Al there because he'd be a post presence while he let Frank Kaminsky, a guy who isn't really much of a post player in the NBA, play a little bit more at the stretch 4 spot. But anyway, get on to my number 9 pick, and I got the Chicago Bulls selecting the point guard out of France, Frank Ntilikina. So Ntilikina, a very unique prospect, a 6'5" point guard prospect. Very good ball handler, very good facilitator, decent shooter, but he does still have some inconsistencies he needs to work out. Again, he's young. That'll come with time. He's also a very tall player at the point guard spot, I believe at about 6'5". So at number 10, I got the New Orleans Pelicans selecting the small forward / power forward out of Florida State, Jonathan Isaac. I really like Jonathan Isaac. I think if there's any player that can slide up in this draft, it's definitely him. So at number 11, I got the Milwaukee Bucks selecting the power forward out of Cal, Ivan Rabb. So coming back for his sophomore year, this name has been talked about in a lot of my mock drafts because I expected him to be a lottery pick this past year. Coming back for another year, and I don't know how much that's going to actually help his draft stock. Might help him polish his game a little bit. You know, his jumper could use a little bit of work. But again, still an elite prospect for this year's NBA draft. Should once again be expected to be a lottery pick. At number 12, I got the Atlanta Hawks selecting the guard out of Kentucky, Malik Monk. So Malik Monk's draft stock it's all over the place right now. You know, he was a 5-star prospect coming into Kentucky and a little bit short if he plays at the 3, but still, you know, I like him as a prospect to go in the lottery. I don't think that he's going to make it out of the top 20. There's some mock drafts that have him as low as the early second round that I saw. Not that many of them, but most of them had him around the 20 to 25 range. And again, I think he's going to go a little bit higher than that. So at number 13, I got the Dallas Mavericks selecting the point guard out of NC State, Dennis Smith. So this is one of the best players that I think NC State will have for a while. You know, one of the best recruits they've had in a while. And, you know, the Mavericks need help at point guard long term. There's no doubt about that. Or I believe their starter right now is still Darren Williams. Anyway, at number 14, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the power forward out of Kentucky, Bam Adebayo. So, you know, Nuggets have Kenneth Faried right now, but there's trade rumors that surface every year about Kenneth Faried leaving. I'm not saying he's going to leave, but it's just something to pay attention to. Again, this is more of a best player available sort of pick at this point in the draft. So at number 15, I got the Minnesota Timberwolves selecting the power forward out of Germany, Isaiah Hartenstein. I really like this kid. I think go watch his mixtape or his highlights or something if you can. You know, he's been talked about as like a Kevin Love with athleticism sort of prospect. Good shooter, good athleticism, he's a good scorer in the paint. Needs a little bit more touch up on his, back to the basket scoring, but good on defense too. Again, a guy that I could see having his draft stock rise before the next NBA draft comes around. So at number 16, I got the New York Knicks selecting the shooting guard out of Duke, and that's Grayson Allen. You know, the Knicks right now have Courtney Lee at the 2. You know, I think he's a good long-term rotation option, but I think they're going to need another shooting guard in that rotation to help, at least if they're going to use the same lineup with Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, Carmelo Anthony, and Courtney Lee to compete for a while. I think that they're going to need to be able to have another guard in that rotation that's, you know, an elite shooter, a good scorer, and, you know, has proven that he can do that in college, and that's definitely Grayson Allen. So at number 17, I got the Miami Heat selecting the small forward out of Michigan State, Miles Bridges. Bridges is a shooting guard and small, actually I think he can play both, that just has explosive athleticism, great slasher. I think he will be, he's the type of player that I think can fit into really any system. He's a little bit short to play at the 3, but again, the explosive athleticism just kind of makes up for that. So at number 18, I got the Washington Wizards selecting the small forward out of Syracuse, Tyler Lydon. You know, Syracuse had one player with a meteoric rise in his draft stock in Malachi Richardson last year. Tyler Lydon, I mean, they're different players, but, you know, I could see the same thing this year. Syracuse expected to be good again this year, so just think to keep an eye on. At number 19, I got the Utah Jazz selecting the small forward out of Florida State, Dwayne Bacon. So another player that stayed for his sophomore year. You know, I think it's going to help him. You know, he was able to pair up with Malik Beasley last year to be one of the better freshman duos in college basketball. You know, he's an elite athlete off the wing. Had a scholarship to play football at Florida State as well. And I think with him really being maybe the focal point of the team this year, being able to team up with another guy like Jonathan Isaac might give him that extra push to be able to become like maybe even an elite draft prospect, who knows. So at number 20, I got the Detroit Pistons selecting the shooting guard out of Arizona, Lonzo Trier. So Trier, for being a 5-star recruit last year, kind of stayed out of the spotlight. Again, another guy that I expected to go into the draft ended up staying. He's had injury troubles in the past, which has kind of hampered his draft stock over the long term. So if he can stay healthy, I think you'd see a little bit of a rise. So at number 21, I got the Indiana Pacers selecting the center/power forward out of Texas. That's Jarrett Allen. Pacers had good luck selecting a big out of Texas last year, and that was obviously Miles Turner. Jarrett Allen, 5-star recruit coming into Texas. I expect him to have at least a decent freshman season. I think it's better that they got Shaka Smart, Who's the old one? Oh, yeah, that's right. I think it's better that they, forgetting their old coach already. I think it's better they got Shaka Smart there now than Rick Barnes. I believe Rick Barnes is at Tennessee now. But anyway, I think he's better, just a better coach overall. Will help develop players a little bit better. Miles Turner was just kind of mishandled while he was at Texas, but different subject. Anyway, at number 22, I got the Houston Rockets selecting the small forward out of Clemson, Jerron Blossomgame. So Blossomgame really had a breakout year with Clemson this year. I think it's going to help him to stay another year, though. Again, another player that I expected to go into the draft last year stayed. Has had injury problems in the past. I believe his 2014-15 season, he was hampered by injury a little bit. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. But, again, a guy that I think could have another big year and could see his draft stock take him all the way up into, the early 20s. So, at number 23, I got the Toronto Raptors selecting the center out of NC State, Omar Yurtz. I believe it's Yurtz 7. Very, very skilled big, good hands. He's a decent scorer in the paint too. Again, more of a reliable pick. I don't see him making it out of, I'd say, past the mid-20s. He's been a lottery pick in a lot of drafts, or a lot of mock drafts. So again, something to keep an eye on. So at number 24, I got the Portland Trail Blazers selecting the power forward out of Indiana, OG Anunoby. So, Indiana loses, obviously, who was considered the heart and soul of their team last year, Yogi Ferrell. But their front court right now is pretty much loaded between Anunoby and Thomas Bryant. So I think both players will be stuck in the spotlight this year. Could help them out both. So at number 25, I got the Brooklyn Nets selecting the point guard out of Oklahoma State, Jawan Evans. I go to Oklahoma State. I've watched Jawan Evans play. Very smart point guard. He is one of the best ISO point guards that I've ever seen. I believe he won Freshman of the Year last year in the Big 12, and he was injured for a lot of the season. Got elite basketball IQ. He's a good scorer, good defender. A little bit undersized, but again, he's at the one spot, so it doesn't really matter. So, at number 26, I got the Toronto Raptors selecting the shooting guard out of Arizona, Terrence Ferguson. So, got good size at the 2 spot, 6'7", proved very valuable. Again, Arizona's a little bit stocked at the 2. But again, I think every player will find a way to get playing time. Probably could slide in at the 3 if he's 6'7". So, at number 27, I got the San Antonio Spurs selecting the center out of France, and that's Jonathan Jean or Jonathan John. I can't remember exactly how to say that. But I do remember this play. I do remember this name. I watched a lot of his highlights last year. Kid's got, I think, elite potential as a big. I thought he fit in that group last year of international bigs, maybe as the 2nd or 3rd best, probably behind Ivica Zubac. So, coming in as probably the best international big this year, or at least international center. I would say international big because you still got Hartenstein. But, I like what he brings to the table scoring-wise. He's a guy that has elite potential on both ends of the floor, in my opinion. So, at number 28, I got the Oklahoma City Thunder selecting the shooting guard out of Oregon, Dylan Brooks. So, again, breakout season with Oregon last year, led Oregon to a number 1 seed in the tournament. Him and Chris Boucher coming back for another year at Oregon. Both players should at least go in the draft. Boucher probably going to be a 2nd-round pick. So, at number 29, I really like this pick, too. I got the Cleveland Cavaliers selecting the point guard out of Iowa State, Monty Morris. So, they lose Matthew Dellavedova, probably going to need to replace that backup point guard spot behind Kyrie. Monty Morris is a guy that can play very up-tempo, heavy minute system, puts in a lot of effort. He's played heavy minutes last year at Iowa State and probably expected to play even more this year since he's going to be the focal point of the team. again, great fit if the Cavs can snatch him up in the first round. That'd be a great pick. So at number 30 at the Utah Jazz, selecting the shooting guard out of Germany, I believe it's Kostya Mushidi. Again, talented shooting guard, and I believe that caps 2 Utah Jazz first-round picks. Small forward and shooting guard. All right, so that'll pretty much do it for this mock draft. Like I said, wanted to do, quick, quick. It's 15 minutes, quick for me anyway. I'm gonna do my normal thing, put all the picks in the description below, the entire results. If you wanted to look back over them, again, if you skipped to the end of the video for some reason, wanted to see one of the picks and haven't looked in the description. But anyway, that's pretty much it. See ya.